Mason, my fiancé is pregnant, so let's make this quick. Pack your things and leave. I froze, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Mason stood there with a nervous woman holding her close. Her face was familiar, yet it took a moment for everything to click. Fiancé? Pregnant? Mason, what are you talking about? I asked, my voice shaking. He pulled her even closer, almost shielding her from my questions. Meet Lily, my soon-to-be wife. She deserves better than what you could ever give. Lily? My cousin Lily? The office intern I hired as a favor? The room spun, my vision blurring. Mason had always been distant lately, but I chalked it up to our struggles. Infertility had a way of tearing even the strongest couples apart, but this was beyond comprehension. I took a step back, bumping into the corner of the table. Lily, I whispered, not trusting my voice. You're with Mason? Lily's eyes darted around the room, refusing to meet mine. She looked more nervous than guilty. Mason, on the other hand, had a steely resolve, a determination I hadn't seen in a while. I know this is hard, he said, his tone softening ever so slightly. But Lily is pregnant. I need to be there for my child. Child? I scoffed, anger boiling up inside me. Mason, we've been trying for years, and now you just throw me aside for her. Lily spoke up then, her voice timid but firm. Darcy, I didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't mean for this to happen, I repeated, incredulous. You're my cousin, Lily. You work for me. How long has this been going on behind my back? Mason cut in. She's not to blame here. I fell in love with her. It just happened. The betrayal stung like a physical blow. And what about us, Mason? What about everything we went through together? The treatments, the doctors, the hopes every month that were dashed over and over? He didn't answer, just shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, Darcy, but I have to do what's right for my child. The room felt small, stifling. I needed air. Without another word, I turned and left, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. My own husband, with my cousin no less. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and so utterly alone. The echoes of their betrayal followed me out the door, every step heavy and deliberate. I needed a plan, something to hold on to. Mason wasn't just taking another woman. He was taking my family, my dreams, my future. He was leaving me to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. I walked back to our bedroom and began to pack my things, each item another reminder of the life we had built together. Photographs, mementos of trips we had taken, even everyday items like a toothbrush or a pair of slippers, felt loaded with memories that were now tainted. My phone buzzed with a call from Edith, Lily's mother, and my aunt. Ignoring it, I focused on packing. There would be time to deal with family repercussions later. For now, I needed to get out of here, to find some semblance of control. As I zipped up the last suitcase, the gravity of it all hit me. I wasn't just leaving a house, I was leaving behind a dream, a marriage, a future that would never be. But one thing was clear, this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of something else, something stronger, and I would see it through, no matter what it took. Packing my things was a blur. I moved mechanically, stuffing clothes into bags, barely noticing what I was grabbing. I had to leave Mason and Lily far behind. This house, once filled with love and laughter, now felt like a prison of broken dreams. I stepped out, feeling the cool night air hit my face. My phone buzzed again. Aiden, my colleague from the firm. I needed to clear my head, so I walked aimlessly, letting the city lights guide me. The following morning, I found myself outside a small cafe. I stepped inside, ordering a strong coffee. As I sipped, memories of my achievements at the firm floated back. I was good at my job, damn good. I had built my reputation as a successful architect, one project at a time. Then there was Mason, always by my side, or so I had thought. I had secured prestigious contracts for the firm and earned respect from my peers. But with every professional high came the personal low of our infertility struggle. Every failed attempt at having a baby had driven a wedge between Mason and me. But I had always believed we would pull through. We met Lily at a family barbecue. She was fresh out of college, looking for a job. Out of pity, I offered her an internship at my firm. She seemed willing to work hard, at least in the beginning. As time passed, her cocky attitude surfaced. She was sloppy, often arriving late or skipping meetings altogether, leaving me to cover for her. But she was family, and I didn't want to create waves. My thoughts were interrupted by the cafe's doorbell. I looked up to see Claire, my best friend, walking through the door. She saw me and rushed over. "Darcy, I came as soon as I got your message. What happened? She asked, concern etched on her face. I took a deep breath. Mason, he's with Lily, my cousin. She's pregnant. Claire's eyes widened. Are you serious, Lily? That little? She took a deep breath, trying to control her anger. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I admitted, voice barely a whisper. I feel betrayed by both of them. Darcy, you don't deserve this, Claire said, squeezing my hand. You've been through so much. I can't just let it go, I said, feeling a surge of determination. They've taken everything from me. I need to find out more. Claire nodded, her expression serious. I'll help you any way I can. Later that day, venturing to the firm felt strange. The familiar glass doors, the hum of busy work life, all seemed unchanged, yet my world had shifted. The office was buzzing as usual, but as I entered, everything paused for a moment. Whispers floated through the air. In my office, Lily was at her desk, pretending to be busy. I approached her. We need to talk. She looked up, trying to appear nonchalant. Is this about last night? Oh, you bet it is. I snapped. How long has this been going on? You think you can just waltz in and destroy my life? Darcy, calm down, she said, looking around nervously. It just happened. Mason loves me, and he's going to be a father. Save it, I said, glaring at her. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. I walked away, feeling the eyes of curious colleagues on my back. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. If they thought they could ruin my life and get away with it, they were sorely mistaken. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to fight back, whatever it took. The next few days felt like navigating a minefield. I kept to myself at the office, focusing on work to keep the turmoil at bay. But it was impossible to ignore Lily's presence. Her attitude had shifted noticeably, cocky, almost smug. One rainy Tuesday, I entered the break room to find Lily gossiping with some colleagues. Darcy is such a control freak. She's always making everything about her, Lily was saying. I felt a wave of anger. Excuse me, I demanded, stepping forward. Lily's eyes widened momentarily, but she quickly recovered. Oh, Darcy, I was just saying how dedicated you are to your work. Save it, I snapped. Get back to work, all of you. As the small crowd dispersed, I cornered Lily. I know what you're doing. You may have Mason fooled, but not me. Her eyes narrowed. You can't control everything, Darcy. Sometimes things just happen. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to scream. You're playing with fire, Lily. Don't forget that. With that, I turned and left, my heart pounding. I needed to find a way to expose her. But how? Later that week, I started noticing the little things. Lily's work was sloppy, errors everywhere, deadlines missed. It seemed like everything was falling apart around her, except she didn't care. She seemed more interested in flaunting her newfound confidence and her supposed connection to Mason. I called a meeting with Aiden. He was my rock, my trusted colleague. We sat in my office, the door closed for privacy. I need your help, I said. Aiden looked worried. What's going on, Darcy? I need to find out everything about Lily. She's ruining everything I've worked for, and Mason, he's completely blind to it. He leaned forward, concerned. You think she's up to something more? I know she is, I said firmly. But I need proof. Aiden nodded. All right, I'll see what I can dig up. Feeling somewhat better, I focused on work, burying myself in blueprints and project deadlines. But Lily's presence was always there, a constant reminder of my ridicule and betrayal. During lunch one day, I overheard Lily talking loudly to some colleagues. Darcy's designs are so outdated. I don't know why she gets all the credit. I clenched my jaw and continued eating, focusing on every word, my anger intensifying with every snide comment. That evening, Aiden met me in the parking lot. I found something, he said, holding a file. What is it? I asked, eager. Her resume is padded. She lied about her qualifications. She didn't even graduate. I took the file, feeling a sense of relief mixed with anger. This is it. This is how we expose her. The next day, I called Lily into my office. She walked in, her confidence annoyingly high. Close the door, I said. She did, eyeing me warily. What's this about? I threw the file on the desk. Your lies, Lily. Your fake qualifications. You think you can come in here and tarnish everything? She glanced at the file, then back at me. And what are you going to do about it? This, I said, goes straight to HR. You're done here. Lily's face turned pale. You can't do that. Watch me, I said. You've played your games for long enough. You've played your games for long. As she stormed out, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. This wasn't over yet, but it was a start, and I wasn't going to stop until I had my life back piece by piece. Lily had been removed from the office, but her presence still lingered, like a bitter aftertaste. Mason's betrayal was a wound that wasn't healing, and I found myself constantly battling anger and sadness. But I had to push forward. There was more to uncover, and a life to rebuild. One evening, I found myself in our now fractured home, staring at the empty spaces where Mason's belongings used to be. My phone buzzed. Claire. "Darcy, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I sighed, trying to keep my head above water. "Listen, I heard from Edith. She's shocked about what happened. She had no idea." "Good," I said grimly. "At least someone's on my side." "Have you thought about what's next?" Claire pressed. "I have," I said, feeling a new determination. "I need to figure out everything about Mason and Lily's relationship. There are too many questions." Claire paused, then asked, "And after that?" "After that, I'll decide," I replied, my mind whirring with possibilities. At work, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew about Lily's abrupt departure, but no one dared to ask me directly. Instead, whispers and sideways glances filled the office. Despite the chaos, Aiden remained a rock. "Darcy, how's everything?" he asked, showing genuine concern. "I'm coping," I said. "I'll need your help again, Aiden. There's more to this story." "I've got your back," he assured me. Days later, trouble brewed again. Mason showed up at the office unannounced. His presence sent immediate unease through me. "Can we talk?" he asked, his tone softer than I expected. I gestured for him to enter my office, closing the door behind us. "What do you want?" He hesitated, then said, "Darcy, I didn't come here to fight. I want to explain." "Explain?" I scoffed, crossing my arms. "Explain how you cheated on me with my cousin? Knocked her up and expected me to just pack up and leave?" He winced. "I know it looks bad." "Looks bad?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "It is bad, Mason." He took a deep breath. "It wasn't planned. It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you." My eyes hardened. "Oh, save it. None of that excuses what you did." "Darcy, I miss you," he admitted, voice shaking. "Miss me?" I laughed bitterly. "You're unbelievable." He reached out, but I stepped back. "Darcy, please understand. I'm still here for you." I shook my head, feeling disgusted. "You've ruined everything. There's no turning back now. Can we at least talk?" he pleaded. "One last chance?" I stared at him, debating. "Fine, we'll talk, but not now. I need time." Mason nodded, grateful. "Thank you." As he left, I sank into my chair, trying to process the emotions swirling inside me. One thing was clear. I couldn't trust his words. Aiden knocked, entering the room. "Everything okay?" "No," I admitted, feeling exhausted. "But I'll manage." "Stay strong, Darcy," he said. "You've got people who care about you." "Thanks, Aiden," I said, giving him a weak smile. "I appreciate it." As the days turned into weeks, I continued to piece together the fragments of my life, slowly but surely. Mason's betrayal and Lily's deceit had rocked my world, but they wouldn't break me. This was just a temporary setback. I was stronger than that. I sat at my desk the next day, trying to focus on my designs, but Mason's unexpected visit haunted my thoughts. Suddenly, there was a light knock at the door. Aiden peeked in. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Yeah, come in," I replied, putting down my pencil. He closed the door behind him. I did a little more digging into Lily's past, found something interesting. "What is it?" I asked, intrigued. He handed me a folder. Her last 2 jobs didn't end well. Both places reported issues with her work ethic and integrity. "Not surprised," I muttered, flipping through the pages. "This just adds to the pile." Aiden leaned in. "What's your next move?" "I'm going to expose her for who she really is," I said firmly. "But I need to do it right." That evening, I was at home, pacing the living room, when I heard a knock. I opened the door to find Mason and Lily standing there. My stomach churned. "What do you want?" I demanded. "We need to talk," Mason said. "Fine." "Make it quick," I replied, stepping aside to let them in. "We're here to clear the air," Mason started, his tone unusually calm. "Clear the air?" I said, incredulous. "After everything you've done?" Lily spoke up then, her voice lacking any real sincerity. "Darcy, we didn't mean for things to get out of hand." I glared at her. "You think you can just waltz in here and make everything better with a few words?" Mason sighed. "We want to make amends." "Amends?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You've destroyed everything I cared about." Lily shifted uncomfortably. "Darcy, we Save it, Lily, I interrupted. I know about your past jobs, your lies. You're not fooling anyone here. Mason's face went pale. What are you talking about? Ask her, I said, nodding towards Lily. She's been lying through her teeth. Lily's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Darcy, please. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, my voice ice cold. You're a manipulator and a fraud. Mason turned to Lily, his eyes narrowing. Is this true? She looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Mason, Enough, I shouted, my emotions boiling over. Get out of my house. Mason hesitated, then took Lily by the arm, leading her out. We'll talk later, he muttered. As the door closed behind them, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't over, but it was a start. The next day at work, I called a staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the conference room, the air thick with curiosity. Thank you all for coming, I began. I have some important updates. I paused, letting the room settle. It has come to my attention that certain individuals have been spreading false information and causing unrest in the office. There were murmurs of agreement and nods around the room. As your leader, it is my responsibility to ensure a trustworthy and professional environment, I continued. I want you all to know that we are taking steps to address this. Aiden, who was standing in the back, gave me a supportive nod. We're in this together, his eyes seemed to say. As the meeting ended and people filed out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't going to let anyone ruin what I had built. Not Mason, not Lily. This was my life, my work, and I would protect it fiercely. Later that night, as I sat by the window, the city lights twinkling below, I felt a sense of resolve. The journey was far from over, but I was ready. This fight wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life and my future. And I was far from done. I woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose. It was time to dig deeper into Lily's past. Aiden and I had only scratched the surface, and I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. I called Aiden to my office. We need more on Lily. I have a feeling her deceit goes deeper than fake resumes. Understood, he said. I'll make it a priority. Feeling a bit lighter, I returned to my work. My designs were coming together nicely, and the distraction was welcome. A few days later, Aiden walked in with another folder. You're not going to believe this, he said, handing it over. Inside were documents outlining a string of manipulative relationships and deceitful behaviors, not just at work, but in her personal life, too. It was a goldmine of dirt. She's left a trail of destruction everywhere she's been, I muttered. It gets worse, Aiden added. She has a history of lying about pregnancies to keep men around. I felt a surge of anger and disgust. This is perfect. We have to confront her. Aiden nodded, determination in his eyes. Let's do it. We decided to confront Lily in the office. As we walked through the hallways, my heart pounded. This was it. In the break room, Lily was chatting with some colleagues, clearly enjoying herself. Aiden and I approached her. Lily, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady. She glanced up, surprised. Now? Yes, I snapped. Now. We moved to a private corner, Aiden standing close behind me for support. I held up the folder. You know what this is? I asked, my tone icy. Lily's eyes darted to the folder, then back to me. What are you talking about? Your history of lies and manipulation, I said, opening the folder. Fake pregnancies, deceitful relationships, and the list goes on. Her face went pale, her facade crumbling. Darcy, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You've been using people for your own gain, and it stops now. She looked at Aiden, pleading. You can't believe this. It's not true. Aiden's expression was cold. We've seen enough proof, Lily. You're finished. Her shoulders slumped, realizing she had no way out. Please, Darcy, I'm begging you. Don't do this. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my life, I said, my voice firm. Pack your things and leave. As Lily left the office, tears streaming down her face, I felt a sense of triumph. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Later that evening, I received a call from Mason. Darcy, we need to talk. Lily is saying all sorts of things. Meet me at the office, I replied. He arrived, looking troubled. I stepped out, holding the folder. You need to see this. As he flipped through the documents, his face turned ashen. I can't believe this, he whispered. Believe it, I said coldly. She's been lying to you from the start. But the baby, he stammered. Lies, I confirmed. It's what she does. Mason looked broken. Darcy, I'm so sorry. It's too late for apologies, I said, my voice firm. You made your choice. As he left, I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The truth was out, but the damage was done. Yet, I realized this was a new beginning. The storm had passed, and I was ready to rebuild, and I had the strength to do it, with or without Mason. The next few days passed in a haze. The revelation about Lily had caused ripples throughout our social and professional circles. Word spread quickly, and soon everyone knew about her deceitful ways. I received a call from Edith, Lily's mother, one afternoon. Her voice was trembling. "Darcy, what's happening? Lily's been saying terrible things." "She brought it on herself, Edith. She lied and manipulated everyone," I replied. "But she's my daughter," Edith said, her voice breaking. "I know this is hard, but she's been deceiving us all. You have to understand that," I said gently. There was silence, then a soft sob. "I trusted her. I trusted her with you." I didn't know what to say, so I just listened as Edith cried softly. When she finally hung up, I felt a strange sense of empathy mixed with resolve. The truth was out, but the fallout was far from over. Mason was having his own share of problems. His colleagues at work had begun to distance themselves, and our mutual friends were hesitant to take a side. One evening, he showed up at the office, looking haggard. "Darcy, can we talk?" he asked, his voice rough. I looked at him, feeling a pang of sympathy. "All right." We sat in my office, the air thick with unspoken words. "I've lost everything," he said finally. "You brought this on yourself, Mason. You chose Lily, knowing what it would cost." He looked down, rubbing his temples. "I know, and I regret it every single day, but I didn't know she was lying about everything." "It's too late for regrets," I said firmly. "You have to face the consequences." We sat in silence for a few moments. Finally, Mason looked up. "Is there no way to make amends?" I shook my head. "You shattered any trust I had. This isn't something that can be fixed with words." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand." As Mason left, I felt a wave of exhaustion. It was like coming to the end of a long, grueling marathon. There were no winners here, only survivors. On the work front, my determination paid off. My projects were on track, and the team had rallied behind me. Claire was a constant source of support, and Aiden's steadfastness made every challenge seem manageable. One evening, we gathered at a small bar to unwind. Claire raised her glass. "To Darcy, for showing us what real strength looks like." Everyone cheered, and I felt a warmth spread through me. These were my people, my real family. As the night wore on, Aiden pulled me aside. "You did it, Darcy. You've come out stronger." "I had help," I replied, smiling at him. He looked at me, his gaze steady. "You're incredible. You know that? You deserve so much better." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. "Thank you, Aiden, for everything." Walking home that night, the city lights seemed brighter. I had faced betrayal, deceit, and heartbreak. But through it all, I had found my true strength. The next morning, I sat in my office, planning the next big project. There was a knock at the door, and Claire walked in with a huge grin. "You won't believe this. Lily's trying to salvage her reputation, but no one's buying it. She's getting ostracized everywhere." I looked at her, feeling a sense of justice. "Karma," Claire nodded. "Exactly. Karma." As I turned back to my work, I felt a deep sense of closure. Everything was falling into place, the pieces of my life rearranging themselves into something stronger, something new. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. Months had passed since the storm of betrayal and revelation. My life had slowly pieced itself back together, stronger and more resilient than ever. My career was flourishing. Heading several new architectural projects felt like a triumph, a testament to my determination and skill. One afternoon, while I was overseeing a site, my phone rang. It was Claire. "Darcy, you've got to see this," she said excitedly. "What's up?" I replied, trying to hear over the construction noise. "Check your email right now," she insisted. I found a quiet corner to look at my phone. In my inbox was a forwarded message outlining a prestigious architecture award nomination. "I don't believe it," I whispered, scrolling through the details. "Believe it, girl. You've earned this," Claire said with pride. I leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of the past year lift slightly. "Thank you, Claire, for always believing in me." In the following weeks, my workload grew, but so did the excitement. I threw myself into the projects, channeling every ounce of my energy and creativity. The team rallied around me, their support and enthusiasm a constant boost. One evening, as we wrapped up a meeting, Aiden approached me. There's a gala for the award nominees next week. Are you going? I wasn't sure, I admitted, but maybe I should. You should definitely go, he encouraged. And you won't be going alone. We're all going to be there, cheering you on. I smiled, feeling grateful. Thanks, Aiden, that means a lot. The night of the gala arrived quickly. Dressed in an elegant black gown, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Claire and Aiden met me at the venue, both looking proud and supportive. As we entered the grand hall, I spotted familiar faces, colleagues, clients, industry leaders. It felt surreal to be among them as a nominee. The evening progressed with speeches and presentations. When my name was announced as the winner of the Rising Star Award, the room erupted in applause. I walked up to the stage, my heart pounding. Congratulations, Darcy, the presenter said as he handed me the trophy. Thank you, I managed, feeling a wave of emotion. This means the world to me. As I stood there holding the award, I saw Mason at the back of the room. He looked different, humbled, almost defeated. After the ceremony, he approached me hesitantly. Darcy, can we talk? He asked, his voice filled with regret. I nodded, leading him to a quieter corner. What is it, Mason? I wanted to say I'm sorry. Truly, I've realized how much I've lost, he said, his eyes earnest. I looked at him, feeling a mix of emotions. Mason, I appreciate your apology, but it's too late. You broke something that can't be fixed. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I understand. I just needed you to know. As he left, I felt a sense of closure. The past was behind me, and I was ready to move forward. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. The gala, the award, Mason's apology. It all felt like a final chapter closing. My future was bright, filled with new opportunities and possibilities. Returning to my office, I found a small bouquet on my desk with a note from Aiden. To new beginnings. I smiled, feeling hopeful. Life had thrown its worst at me, but I had risen above it. I was ready for whatever came next, strong and unbreakable. As I sat at my desk planning the next big project, I knew one thing for sure. I had reclaimed my life, and I wasn't looking back. The journey had been painful, but it had also made me who I am, unstoppable. The news hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. My husband, Rowan, had just received a call that his estranged uncle, the wealthy business magnate Jonathan Winthrop, had passed away. Your uncle named you as one of the primary beneficiaries in his will, the lawyer on the other end announced. Rowan's eyes widened in disbelief. My uncle? But we haven't spoken in over a decade. Are you certain? Quite certain, Mr. Blackwood. You and your wife are requested to attend the reading of the will tomorrow. As the call ended, Rowan turned to me, his expression a mix of shock and confusion. Alara, this could be our chance to turn things around. Uncle Jonathan's fortune could save our struggling business. I forced a smile, trying to mirror his cautious optimism, but a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. Nothing in life came without a price, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this unexpected windfall would demand a heavy toll. The next day, we found ourselves in the opulent study of Jonathan Winthrop's sprawling mansion, surrounded by his legal team and other potential beneficiaries. As the lawyer started reading the will, a hush fell over the room. To my estranged nephew, Rowan Blackwood, and his wife, Alara, I bequeath my entire estate, including this property and all assets, on one condition. My heart raced as the lawyer paused for dramatic effect. Rowan squeezed my hand, his palm clammy. They must take up permanent residence in this mansion for a period of no less than 1 year. A collective gasp filled the room, but one voice rose above the others, dripping with venom. This is an outrage, Rowan's mother, Margot, spat. That inheritance is rightfully mine. I'm Jonathan's only living relative. Her eyes locked onto me, filled with undisguised hatred. This is that little gold digger's doing, I'm sure of it. Rowan stepped forward, his jaw clenched. Mother, you have no right. Don't you dare take her side, you ungrateful whelp. Margot hissed, her words slicing like knives. The lawyer cleared his throat, attempting to restore order. The terms are clear, Mrs. Winthrop. If Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood fail to meet the residence requirement, the entire estate will be distributed among various charities. Margot's eyes narrowed dangerously. Mark my words, you'll regret this. That mansion and everything in it belong to me by rights. I'll make your life a living hell until you surrender what's mine. As her gaze bored into me, a chill ran down my spine. I knew, in that moment, our lives had taken an irrevocable turn, and the battle lines had been drawn. A week later, we stood before the looming gates of Winthrop Manor, our new home, or gilded cage as it felt. The ancient stone edifice seemed to stare down at us, its Gothic spires like accusing fingers against the slate-gray sky. "Are you sure about this?" I asked Rowan, my grip tightening on his hand. He offered a grim smile. "We don't have a choice if we want a future. Just promise me you'll be careful around Mother." As if on cue, the gates creaked open, and Margot emerged from the shadows like a specter, her expression a rictus of disdain. "So the prodigal son returns," she sneered, "and he brings his little bride into my home." I fought the urge to recoil as her eyes raked over me with undisguised loathing. "This is Uncle Jonathan's home now, Mother," Rowan said, his voice strained. "We're here to honor his wishes." "His wishes?" Margot barked a harsh laugh. "That senile old fool was manipulated in his final days, no thanks to your scheming wife, I'm sure." Before I could respond, she stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "Listen closely, you conniving little tramp. This is my domain, and I'll make your life a waking nightmare until you slink back to whatever hovel you crawled out of." Rowan pulled me back, shielding me with his body. "That's enough, Mother. You've gone too far." Margot's lips curled into a cruel smile. "We'll see about that." As she turned and stormed back towards the manor, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The games had begun. Over the following weeks, Margot's campaign of subtle torment intensified. Priceless heirlooms went missing, only to reappear in bizarre locations. Strange noises echoed through the halls at night, keeping me awake. And the servants treated me with thinly veiled contempt, no doubt following Margot's lead. "She's just trying to rattle you," Rowan insisted. But I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. One night, as I descended the grand staircase, I felt a violent shove from behind. I tumbled down the steps, searing pain lancing through my body as I crashed to the marble floor. When I finally regained my senses, Margot was standing over me, a sickening grin plastered across her face. "Clumsy girl," she purred. "You should be more careful." As she turned and walked away, I felt a cold certainty settle in my gut. This was no longer a game to her. Margot was willing to go to any lengths to drive me out, even if it meant destroying me in the process. After the accident on the stairs, I knew I couldn't trust anyone in that house. Except perhaps Rowan, but even his loyalty was becoming strained by his mother's vicious campaign against me. I took to wandering the manor's shadowy corridors at night when everyone else was asleep, searching for any clue that could expose Margot's true motives. On one such foray, I discovered a hidden door behind an antique bookcase, leading to a dust-covered study that seemed untouched for decades. Inside, I found a trove of old letters and documents, including correspondence between Margot and Jonathan in their younger years. What I read made my blood run cold. It appeared Margot had been stealing from the family fortune for years through elaborate financial schemes, only to be cut off by Jonathan when he uncovered her deceit. As I dug deeper, I also uncovered evidence that Margot had once been involved with a shady business partner of Jonathan's, a man who later disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Had Margot gone so far as to have him killed to cover her tracks? Armed with this damning information, I knew I had to confront her, once and for all. But when I tried to show the evidence to Rowan, he refused to believe his beloved mother was capable of such depravity. "These letters prove nothing," he snapped, pushing the documents away. "Mother has been nothing but generous and loving her entire life. I think you're allowing your imagination to run wild." "Don't be a fool, Rowan," I cried, my frustration boiling over. "Can't you see she's manipulating you, just like she's been doing your entire life?" His jaw tightened, and I realized I'd struck a nerve. "Get out. I need some time alone to think about all of this." As I left him brooding in the study, a pit of dread opened in my stomach. Margot's web of lies was so intricately woven, so deeply rooted in Rowan's psyche, that I feared nothing short of a miracle could make him see the truth. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began plaguing me again. More missing valuables, eerie scratching sounds from behind the walls, and an increasing sense of being watched. I knew Margot was behind it all, but I could never catch her in the act. Then, one evening, the servants began whispering about a scandalous story that had surfaced in the local papers, depicting me as a shameless gold digger who had ensnared Rowan through nefarious means. The vicious lies left me reeling, and I knew Margot's hand was behind this public defamation. When I confronted Rowan about it, he seemed conflicted, torn between his loyalty to me and his ingrained devotion to his mother. "Perhaps it would be best if you left for a while," he said, unable to meet my eyes, "at least until this blows over." As I stared at the man I loved, I realized our relationship was hanging by a thread, fraying under the relentless onslaught of Margot's cruelty. If I didn't act soon, I would lose everything: my home, my husband, and any chance at the life we'd dreamed of. The battle lines had been drawn, and I would have to fight with every weapon at my disposal if I hoped to survive the war Margot had declared. No matter the cost, I wouldn't go down without a fight. In the aftermath of the vicious newspaper story, the atmosphere at Winthrop Manor became suffocating. Rowan grew increasingly distant, torn between his loyalty to me and his lifelong conditioning by his manipulative mother. Meanwhile, Margot's underhanded tactics escalated in boldness and cruelty. It all came to a head one chilly autumn night. I had retired early to the bedroom Rowan and I shared, exhausted from another day of walking on eggshells in that accursed house. As I prepared for bed, a faint scratching sound came from the adjoining dressing room, like fingernails on wood. My heart pounding, I crept toward the noise, pushing open the dressing room door. That's when I saw it: a blazing trail of liquid snaking along the floor towards the piles of cast-off clothing. The unmistakable scent of kerosene filled my nostrils, seconds before the first lick of flame consumed the fabric. I stumbled back, choking on thick black smoke as the fire spread with terrifying speed. By the time I made it back into the bedroom, flames licked hungrily at the draperies and seared my lungs. I clawed desperately at the bedroom door, but some force held it firmly in place from the other side. "Help! Rowan! Please, someone help me!" I screamed, panic clawing at my throat as the room became an inferno around me. Then, over the roar of the blaze, I heard it, Margot's shrill laughter cutting through the chaos. That twisted cackle would haunt my nightmares for the rest of my days. Just as the searing pain and smoke threatened to overwhelm me, the bedroom door exploded inward with a thunderous crack. Rowan burst in, soot streaking his panic-stricken face, and pulled me bodily from the conflagration raging within. I don't remember much after that, only fragments of being rushed to the hospital, bandages binding my scorched skin, and the vacant look in Rowan's eyes as he watched over me in silence. When I finally regained my senses days later, Rowan sat slumped by my bedside, his expression hardening as I recounted the night's events. "She tried to kill you," he muttered in a hollow tone, the truth he had been so desperate to deny finally settling in his bones. "My own mother." I took his hand, ignoring the sting of my blistered skin, and made him meet my gaze. "She has to be stopped, Rowan, before this goes any further." His eyes smoldered with rage and anguish. I know. But even then, as he said the words, I could see the fractures splintering his loyalty, the product of a lifetime's manipulation threatening to reassert itself. Margot's twisted lies had sunk their hooks in deep, and I feared they might never fully release their grip on the man I loved. Rowan pressed his forehead to my hand, his next words barely more than a pained whisper. "I want to believe you, Alara, more than anything, but without proof, without knowing the full truth of what she's done." He trailed off, and in that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life, as if I were drifting helplessly at sea with no anchor to hold me in place. It was then that I knew I would have to take matters into my own hands if I had any hope of surviving Margot's vendetta and salvaging what little remained of my crumbling life. Whatever the cost, I had to find a way to expose that vile woman's sins before they destroyed me completely. After the harrowing ordeal of the fire, I knew I couldn't remain a passive victim any longer. If I didn't take decisive action, Margot's malicious games would consume me completely. Rowan's loyalty was hanging by a frayed thread, and it was clear I couldn't rely on him to protect me from his mother's ruthless machinations. In the depths of that long, agonizing night following the inferno, a newfound resolve took root within me. I would gather whatever allies and evidence I could to finally expose Margot for the vicious, conniving snake she truly was, even if it meant facing her darkness head-on. My first step was contacting the local authorities and providing them with the damning letters and documents I'd uncovered, detailing Margot's financial crimes and the mysterious disappearance of Jonathan's former business partner. While the police seemed skeptical at first, the mounting pile of evidence against her could not be easily dismissed. Next, I reached out to an unlikely source, Francine, one of the manor's longest-serving maids who had endured Margot's cruel treatment for decades. Years of pent-up resentment bubbled to the surface as I revealed what I knew of Margot's misdeeds. "That wretched harpy has had her talons in me since I were a young girl," Francine hissed, her voice thick with hatred. "Blackmail, threats, you name it. She's a right evil one, that's for certainty." With Francine's help, I began uncovering even more of Margot's sordid secrets, illicit affairs, underhanded business dealings, and long-buried scandals that she'd worked tirelessly to conceal. It became increasingly clear that her entire life was a meticulously constructed web of lies and deceit. However, the final piece of the puzzle remained maddeningly elusive, the key to unraveling her twisted scheme against me and exposing her murderous intentions once and for all. That crucial lead finally came from an unexpected source: Margot's own estranged younger sister, Emma, who had been ostracized from the family years ago. I received an anonymous letter from her, detailing a particularly vicious confrontation that had driven her from Winthrop Manor in disgrace. "Margot has always been rotten to the core," Emma wrote in a shaky hand. "Petty, vindictive, utterly consumed by greed and status. But you must know the truth about what really happened the night our father died, the real reason she turned on me so viciously." My hands trembled as I read on, the final horrifying revelation unfolding like a serpent unfurling its coils. Emma claimed that on the night of their father's fatal heart attack, she had discovered Margot rifling through his safe and pocketing wads of cash and valuable documents. When Emma threatened to expose her sister's despicable actions, Margot had snapped, unleashing a torrent of vile accusations and threats that left Emma fearing for her very life. In that moment, I knew I held the linchpin, the damning evidence that could finally topple Margot's house of cards and reveal the true depravity lurking behind her meticulously crafted facade. Armed with Emma's testimony and the weight of everything I'd uncovered, I resolved to bring the full truth to light in a final, climactic confrontation. No more games, no more veiled threats or skirting the periphery of Margot's secrets. It was time to wield the power of her own sins as a weapon and cut her down to size once and for all. As I steeled myself for the impending battle, I could almost feel the gathering storm rumbling in the distance, heavy with the promise of reckoning. Margot's reign of terror and deception was nearing its end, by her own hand or by mine. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I expected. I had summoned the estate's executors, the police, and a few trusted allies to bear witness as I finally stripped away Margot's veil of lies and deception. We gathered in the manor's grand hall, the vaulted ceiling seeming to press down with the weight of the impending confrontation. Rowan stood apart from the others, his expression haunted as he steeled himself for the ugliness to come. Margot swept in fashionably late, as was her style, her haughty gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd with a mix of disdain and bemusement. "Well, well, to what do I owe this merry little gathering?" She arched an inquisitive eyebrow at me. "Don't tell me my dear daughter-in-law is hatching another pathetic scheme for attention?" "Cut the act, Margot," I spat, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Your game is up. We know everything." For a split second, a flicker of uncertainty danced across her face before the mask reasserted itself. "I haven't the faintest idea what you're raving about, you delusional little—" "Save your venom," I snarled, retrieving a thick manila envelope with a trembling hand. "We have all the proof we need of your lies, your crimes, your murderous intentions." As I began laying out the damning trail of evidence, the letters, the financial records, Emma's testimony, Margot's expression shifted from derision to outright fury. Her eyes bulged with unbridled rage as each new revelation compounded the last. "That sniveling, traitorous whore," she screeched when I revealed Emma's words. "How dare she slander me with these absurd fairy tales?" Rowan took an involuntary step backward, as if her outburst had struck him bodily. It was the first crack in his staunch denial, the first glimmer of realization seeping through. "These are nothing but malicious fabrications," Margot raged on, turning her vitriol towards the executors and police. "I demand you remove these despicable liars from my home at once." But they stood firm, unmoved by her bluster as the weight of the evidence became insurmountable. With an animalistic shriek of pure fury, Margot turned on me, her immaculately manicured fingernails hooked like talons. "You ungrateful, conniving little snake," she howled, spittle flying from her lips. "This is all you're doing, isn't it? You could never be content with an ounce of my generosity. Well, I'll see you utterly destitute and ruined for this, I swear on my life." In that moment she seemed to swell to an even more grotesque, inhuman form, a twisted, wrath-filled harpy clawing desperately at the unraveling threads of her meticulously crafted lies. Rowan moved to intervene, to shield me from his mother's incandescent rage, but I held up a hand to stop him. I would face her unbridled fury and let it consume itself to bitter ashes. "It's over, Margot," I said, startled by the calm resolution in my own voice. "No more lies, no more manipulations. Your house of cards has collapsed around you, and this time there's no escaping the consequences of your actions." For a long, breathless moment, she seemed on the verge of unleashing another torrent of rage and denial. But then something shifted in her eyes. The fight bled out of her, letting the mask slip just a bit to reveal the hollowed, broken thing that lurked beneath. As the police moved to take her into custody, Margot didn't resist. She simply sagged in on herself like a deflating husk and allowed herself to be led away in contemptuous silence. Only then did the floodgates open for Rowan. He crumpled to the floor in racking sobs, all the years of anguish and torment finally spilling forth. As I gathered him in my arms, I knew both healing and hardship still lay ahead. Though Margot's twisted games had been exposed, shattered shards of her poisoned legacy still remained, fractures that would take years to mend if they ever fully could. But in that moment, allowing the cathartic release to wash over us both, I knew we would persevere. Margot's tyranny had been broken, and from the ashes of her ruination, perhaps some semblance of hard-won peace could finally take root. In the aftermath of Margot's explosive unraveling, the consequences of her depravity unfurled like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. The evidence we had gathered proved irrefutable. Records of embezzlement, blackmail, corporate sabotage, and even mounting circumstantial ties to at least one suspicious disappearance. As the full extent of her sins came to light through a highly publicized legal prosecution, the reactions from her once vaunted social circles ranged from shock and revulsion to a perverse sort of schadenfreude. Who would have thought prim-proper Margot Winthrop was really such a degenerate monster? I overheard one well-coiffed matron murmur to her companion outside the courthouse. "She always seemed so genteel and refined. Just goes to show you never really know someone, do you?" For her part, Margot embraced her infamy with a sort of deranged defiance, lashing out with unrestrained vitriol at every turn. It was as if, now that her facade had been irreparably shattered, she delighted in flaunting the full breadth of her depravity. "You imbeciles have no inkling of what I've sacrificed to maintain our family's status and legacy," she screeched during one courtroom tirade. "You're fortunate I didn't have the lot of you disposed of the same way as that sniveling worm Jonathan's partner." A collective gasp went up from the gallery, feeding Margot's twisted delight like a starving flame. She turned her blazing eyes towards Rowan and me, and I felt an involuntary shudder at the naked loathing burning in their depths. "Look at them, cowering like the gutless fools they are. You're the reason our noble lineage lies in ashes, the both of you. Weak-willed, pathetic." Her venomous diatribe was finally cut off by the stern banging of the judge's gavel. But even as the bailiffs muscled her away, Margot directed one last look of pure, unbridled hatred in our direction. A silent promise that this war was far from over, at least in her mind. Over the following weeks, Margot's downfall accelerated with dizzying speed. Asset seizures, criminal indictments, and the inexorable avalanche of public censure stripped away what tattered remnants of status and influence she had once wielded like a blunt instrument. Yet through it all, she remained utterly defiant and unrepentant. "They'll all get what's coming to them, mark my words," she spat at reporters camped outside her palatial estate, now little more than an empty, echoing mausoleum. "This is far from over, you mealy-mouthed vultures." Unfortunately for Margot, Her rabid threats and unhinged ravings only further cemented her legacy as a once powerful matriarch, undone by her own boundless avarice and corruption. Society had turned its back on her with a mixture of pity and disdain, leaving her bitter screeds to be consumed by indifferent winds. On the day her sentencing was finally handed down, a staggering array of charges resulting in a harsh multi-year prison term, Margot unleashed a final, unrestrained torrent of malice. "Curse all of you," she howled, thrashing against the iron grip of the bailiffs as they tried to drag her from the courtroom. "Especially you, Alara. This is far from over, you hear me? I'll have my revenge if it's the last thing I—" Whatever final, dire imprecation she intended was cut off as she disappeared through the door, the slam of iron against wood echoing through the court like a grim period. Silence hung heavy for several breathless seconds, and then the hushed murmurs began rippling through the gallery once more. A vile chapter had finally been closed. The damage caused by one woman's unchecked ambition and malice laid horrifyingly bare. As Rowan and I embraced in the wake of that sordid spectacle, I knew our own road towards healing and redemption would be long and arduous. The scars left by Margot's cruelty ran deeper than any inflicted wound. But at least now, at long last, we could begin to rebuild what she had so nearly destroyed. With the poison she had injected into our lives finally excised, there was a chance to nurture something new from the blighted, burned remains of our former existences. Those tender green shoots wouldn't take root overnight, of course. Deep, ravaging fires leave extensive scarring in their wake, but we would tend the ashes dutifully, allowing new life to gradually emerge, hushed and humble at first, then growing stronger and more resilient with each passing season. It was the only way to banish Margot's toxic legacy once and for all, by cultivating the power to persevere where her hatred and corruption could only hope to wither and decay. In the weeks following Margot's sentencing, an eerie silence descended over Winthrop Manor. The echoing halls, once electric with her malicious presence, now felt like a vacuum, the stifling calm before the soft patter of new life begins to take tentative root. Rowan and I moved through those early days in a numb haze, going through the motions of setting the manor to rights, but still emotionally adrift from the cataclysm that had reshaped our lives so violently. We spoke in hushed tones, as if afraid to disturb some lingering malignant force hovering in the shadows. The servants, finally freed of Margot's tyrannical grasp, tiptoed about their duties with the same wary restraint as field mice anticipating the return of a prowling cat. Then, one crisp autumn morning, I awoke to find Rowan sitting at the foot of our bed, his shoulders hunched and head bowed beneath some invisible weight. "Rowan," I murmured, reaching out a hand to his arm. "What's wrong?" For a long moment he didn't respond, simply staring down at his calloused palms as if they belonged to a stranger. Finally, he drew a long, shuddering breath. "I spent so many years letting her gnaw away at my soul, Alara. No matter how vile she became, some part of me could never let go of the fantasy that she actually loved me deep down." Tears welled in his eyes, voice cracking with a lifetime's worth of hurt and disappointment. "She was my mother. I should have protected you from her poisonous lies and cruelty, but I was weak, blinded by delusions of the mother I so desperately wanted her to be." He looked up at me then, anguish etched in the creases of his face. "Can you ever forgive me?" In that moment, I felt my own emotions surge forward like a raging river breaking its banks, not just for the hell Margot had put us through, but for all the lost years we could have spent growing together instead of being warped and diminished by her hatred. I pulled Rowan into a fierce embrace as the dam finally burst, wave after wave of purging sobs racking our bodies in unison. We wept for the wounds that had been inflicted, the scars that would always remain, and the hollow ache of what could have been. But we also wept for the promise of what lay ahead, a new world where Margot's poisonous influence could never again take root. In the days and weeks that followed, we slowly began the work of reclaiming our lives. The manor underwent a top-to-bottom scouring and refurbishment, every last remnant of Margot's corruption purged as if by ritual cleansing. We let go of much of the staff that had enabled her cruelties, opting for a fresh start surrounded by new faces and loyalties. Gone were the dark furnishings, grim draperies, and oppressive decor. through which her malice had seeped like a miasma. In their place, we cultivated light, open spaces, and vibrant designs that spoke of rebirth rather than decay. Slowly, tentatively, the scars began to heal into the thick protective calluses of hard-won resilience and perseverance. What gave me the most solace and hope for our future, however, was witnessing Rowan's own metamorphosis. Where once Margot's manipulations had shaped him into a wavering, conflict-averse shell of a man, now I saw an indomitable pillar of resolve and integrity taking form. Gone were the haunted looks and furtive self-doubts. In their place stood a man embracing his role as master of his own destiny, unbowed by the specter of his mother's grievous wrongs. 5 years after Margot's ruination, Winthrop Manor had been virtually rebuilt from the ground up, retrofitted into not just a home, but a nexus for charitable endeavors aimed at empowering those who had once suffered as we had. Battered women's shelters, youth outreach initiatives, counseling programs, all thrived beneath the roof once shadowed by malice and oppression. We dedicated our newfound resources to cultivating the kindness and goodwill Margot had sought so voraciously to extinguish. And though I knew her poisoned roots would never be fully extractable, watching the fruits of our rebirth blossom with each passing year was the greatest victory I could have hoped to wrest from her clutches. On the eve of the annual charity gala we hosted at the manor, I caught Rowan staring pensively out the window towards the vast Sylvan estate grounds, a pensive smile playing across his weathered features. "Do you ever think about her?" he asked without turning to face me. "About your spite for Mother, I mean?" I considered the weight of his question for a long moment before answering. "She doesn't haunt my thoughts much these days," I admitted. Not out of spite or indifference, but rather resolve. Our eyes met then, a deep understanding passing between us. Margot's hatred very nearly destroyed everything, our relationship, our livelihood, our very souls. But we survived. We persevered through the darkness she inflicted and remade something beautiful from the ashes. I laced my fingers through his, marveling at how far we'd come. That is the greatest revenge we could ever claim over her bitterness and cruelty. Not by perpetuating the cycle of hurt, but by overcoming it and choosing to nurture the light she fought so desperately to smother. Hand in hand, we stood in comfortable silence, watching the golden rays of dusk gild the grounds, the lands and legacy we had reclaimed in the name of all that was good, just, and true. Our tomorrow was unwritten, filled with untold promise and possibility. But I knew, without a shred of doubt, that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would meet them as we had every other, overcoming hate with love, healing old wounds, and ensuring even Margot's darkest of legacies could never take permanent root.